excited to introduce Teddy, my friend, to share with you. He's a very wise, accomplished leader in AT&T, and he's still working there. He'll tell you more. So he will share 3 things he's learned as a leader, and he can teach a lot more than 3 things, but he's been very humble to start with 3 things. So let's give the time to Teddy and give him a warm welcome.
All right, thank you. So how many people we have on a call? I saw 59. Is that rough around
right
the number?
And
okay.
then we have 200 some students who registered, and they're on our distribution, and they will watch the replay.
Okay.
And it's in
Thank
YouTube.
you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Let me just do a quick intro. I know Elaine gave you some background, but this is so my family. I grew up in Hong Kong. This is my family. My mom and my sisters here. This is Stella, by the way. You haven't seen her before. Let me use laser instead. And I have 4 other sisters, 1 younger sister. And a few years ago, we celebrated my mom's 80th birthday, so we get together. We have a dog. His name is Obi, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Star Wars. We've been married 30 years. Actually, we celebrated our 30th anniversary this year in the summer. So we're very blessed with the relationship. I grew up in Hong Kong, and I was educated in the Jesuits high school. For those of you who know anything about Hong Kong, there's a high school called YN College, Kowloon. So this is my Form 1, which would be what, 7th grade class photo. So yeah. The first quiz I gave all of you, like, can you find me in the photo? I can tell you that I did not wear glasses back then. Okay, I didn't start wearing glasses until I was 40 years old. So somewhere here is me. Hopefully it doesn't change that much, but in case you're wondering, there I am right there. So that's me. All right. So Elaine said I was in Beijing, China back then. I started with AT&T in New Jersey in Bell Labs many years ago, 87. And then I moved back to Hong Kong because I grew up in Hong Kong, but I moved back to work in AT&T in Hong Kong. And then I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to work in Beijing. So I relocated to Beijing for a number of years. And then I moved back to the US in Virginia, and then to the San Francisco Bay Area, and then to Dallas. So I live East Coast, West Coast, in the middle of the state and outside the country pretty much my entire career. But I'm still at AT&T after 37 years. You do the math. 36, yeah, sure, 36. So what's next? I don't know. Whatever God leads me, and I'll go. So that's my motto. So what I want to share with you today, I have 45 minutes. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. So what I talk about is called leadership. Now, let me just tell you why I call my talk 3 things I learned. There is a communication class that I took, and the one thing that I remember in that class is they said, if you try to communicate something important, don't keep it no more than 3 points, okay? Because once you get more than 3 points, people stop remembering all the details. So I try to narrow it down to 3 points. Now, it doesn't mean that there's only 3 things important in your life, but my motivation of doing this is to help you. Maybe you need to think about, if I just ask you, give me 3 things that you think is most important about you, what are those 3 things, right? So what I'm going to share today is very personal to me. It's not necessarily applied to you, but hopefully will help you to think through, what is important. The thing I think about leadership, is really not that complicated. If you think about, it's all about you, right? And then the people, your work, family, most of you would be school, family, your social network, your church, these, and how you interact with these people or this environment is really what leadership is all about. Now, some of you have never been in a leadership position, and then you think about, so what is leadership, right? Does it mean if I have a right title, if you the leader of your youth group, or is my teacher my leader? In some way, that is true, right? Leader doesn't mean the title, by the way. It means that you have the personality or the attributes to lead. It involves passion, meaning that you have to be willing to lead. You can't just say, I just want to get a title and then I'm a leader. well, it doesn't work that way. And if you do that, that is not going to last very long. There's also a difference between management versus leadership. Now, I know many of you are not working yet, so that doesn't mean much to you. But as you start working in the workforce, you would be asked to manage, right? Meaning that you manage things. But management is different than leadership. Leadership very often involves people, right? Meaning that you are the leader among the group of people. So you have to be able to lead by example and also willing to step up to take that role. So three things. There are really just three areas I want to talk about. One is about self, right? Meaning yourself. One is about others. Remember that circle I drew you, right? All the others. How do you interact with the others? And the last thing I call is the purpose. Okay, that really tie everything together. Okay, so keep this in mind as I go through the three things, and then you hopefully would makes all sense to you, right? So the number one thing I want to tell you about, sort of thing about me, right, is myself. Okay, I was trained as an engineer. I got my degree in computer science in Columbia, and then I started working in Bell Labs. So I have an engineering degree. So everything that I think about tends to be very structural, and you know how engineers think, right? It's very step by steps where they follow the logic. And one of the things that I find in my 30 plus years in AT&T or working in the industry is very important of asking why. Okay. Now, for most of you who never have working experience, I would encourage you to do the same thing in school as well, right? Because a lot of time your teacher can tell you the what, can tell you the how. They teach you how to do math. They teach you how to, the history or the facts, right? But very importantly, you should ask the question why, because understanding the why give you the perspective of how things come about, right? The history and the in and out, the why. Is the willingness to ask questions. Sometimes you think, well, I don't know, if I ask a question in class, I might look silly, right? Not really, because chances are I have been to many meetings where, I think about, well, I shouldn't ask that question. And someone else asked the question, meaning that people actually have the same question. You just don't know. So be willing to ask the question. One of the things I try to learn more is to read very widely. I always encourage people to read contemporary and classics, both at the same time, or alternate, right? Meaning that some of you like to read the latest novel or whatever. I don't read. I don't read fiction. I just like to read nonfiction. But what I try to do is to alternate between classic, meaning that some of the more classic, especially if you think about some of the Christian writers, right? I find some of the older or the last century Christian writer like C.S. Lewis or even you go back to the earlier 20th century writers tend to give you a better perspective, right? Because it is sort of timeless, right? You can even go back. I mean, if you go to some of you attend college, you might have read some of the classic all the way back to the Greek, Aristotle and Plato, those kind of they call it contemporary civilization philosophy. Those are the things that actually last a long time, right? And the reason that they still publishing those books is for reason, because those are classic. And then you can alternate to read some of the contemporary, right? Meaning that some of the latest technology book or some of the economics book, feel free to read some fiction, the latest one, but don't set yourself to only read the latest and the greatest, right? Try to alternate between the contemporary and the classic, okay? And be willing to ask some question. I covered that already. And get the facts and find the patterns, right? One of the things that I learned most in my experience in computer science, and especially now with generative AI, right? You can go to Ask GPT and ask questions. So the skills that people are looking for is not necessarily how to do things now, is how to ask the right question, right? There's actually a training class now to teach you how to structure the question to ask GPT to maximize the results from the generative AI engine, right? Which is kind of interesting, right? As you think about the job changes, when I studied computer science back in the 80s, what they teach you is the very structured, software coding, right? Teach you how to code in C or whatever. Back then was Pascal. Now is everybody using Python. It's not that that is not important. I still think there's a role for engineer or software engineer to write code, but more and more with generative AI, the skills that people are looking for is to think through what the problem is and to ask the right question, so that the engine will do the work for you to do to give you the answer, right? So a lot of people if you read a lot of the news, if they worry about, does it mean that generative AI will take over a lot of the jobs? The short answer is yes. Some of the job will go away, right? But it doesn't mean that there's no new jobs, right? The new jobs or new skills that the people ask for is understanding the business or understanding the problem and asking the right question. So keep asking questions, keep learning is very important. Now, one of the things that I learned in AT&T is called design thinking. Is really a structured process of thinking through, asking the question why, and all the way to creating a product and then testing it and go back and refine the result and then go out and do the prototype and then get the product. You might not know, but many of you uses Apple product, right? So they go through a lot of design thinking in everything that they do. You don't publicize it, but that's exactly what they do, right? You can think about the first version of the iPhone or the Apple Watch that you have. They've probably gone through 10, 20, maybe more different cycles of refining it before they go out the door and show the world that what the product is. So if you want to participate in that kind of design thinking, you have to think about, what would the people use it for? The first phase, they call it empathize, right? Meaning that your products that you give out has to fit how people's going to use it. Okay. Don't just think about what you think the result is, but think about how the end user will be using it. And then you've defined what it is, right? Think about it. Idea means just throwing different ideas, just try to solve the problem. Chances are when you do the ideation, you throw 100 people. Usually we do some kind of ideation is to have a group of people who have knowledge about the product. They all brainstorm. People would put a sticky note to say, I think this is a good idea. I think that is a good idea. So you have all the sticky notes on the wall. Chances are out of the 100, right, idea, you filter it down to maybe 10 or maybe even 5, right? That's how you sort of ideate and get to the end results. So, but don't feel shy about throwing out idea, because what you think might be a stupid idea, it might turn out to be the best idea. You just don't know, right? So be willing to test. One of the example that I've seen is how to solve the water problem in many of the remote country or destination in Africa. As you can see, a lot of the remote village, they don't really have access to running water. So they have to carry the water on the head and then walk through miles of rough land to try to bring the water to the place. So if you are the engineer asked to solve the problem, what is the best way you can do, right? Now, you can say, well, why don't we just build a water pipe and bring the water to the village? Well, it's easier said than done. It's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of money to do that. But one of the things that after they do a design thinking session is they come up with an ingenious idea, and this is the result. Okay, so notice that you wouldn't think about this solution in Dallas, Texas, right? It doesn't make sense. You're like, what is that? What is that? But it makes a lot of sense in Africa, where they don't have the infrastructure to build. What they do is they think about, how can they come up with a solution that doesn't require a lot of money to build the infrastructure, but at the same time give them to be self-sufficient, right? So they come up with this idea with this water bucket that can roll on the ground. And what's interesting, if you compare to the previous slide, right? The ladies who is adult would have to carry the bucket. Here, the kids will do that. What they entice the kids is, this is fun, right? You go get the water, roll it on the field, and see who's the fastest. So in effect, they actually solve two problems. They give the kids something to do. They also solve the problem of the water that they can carry home. And you can see that this bucket probably doesn't take a lot of money to make, right? It's just standard bucket. You just put a rubber round things around it so that it can roll on the ground and get the handle. Very easy, very usable. So design thinking talk about not necessarily the most complex system or things that you can come about, but to understand how you can solve the people's problem, right? So as I think through that, I try to emphasize, asking the question, be curious, be very curious, right, as to why, understanding the why. And one of the theories is that when you start with a problem, ask why 5 times at least, right? If someone give you the first answer, you say why, and then you keep asking why. By the time you have the 5th why, you probably get to the core of the problem, right? So that's number one. So that's about me. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that I don't cherish other quality that I learned in leadership. But as far as me is concerned, over the last 30 plus years, I see being curious is the number one thing that helped me to be successful. Okay. So let's move on. What is the second one? Second, remember, I think I tell you, is all about the others, right? It's your interaction with the others. Okay. And this area, I actually thought about a lot over the years to say, what are the things that I cherish more in terms of my interaction with the other people over the years? Meng and Elaine know that we used to serve in the Servant Heart Ministry in Dallas. And I know I think about that word servant is very appropriate, because as you serve, as you try to help other people to be successful, you really have to think about you as a servant, right? Meaning to willing to sacrifice your time, your talent. Sometimes, there's a cost to leadership, right? It's not just all gain, it costs you. But I go back to what I said earlier, being a leader is a desire, right? And willing to serve is a desire, not a gesture. What do I mean by that? Is that you have to be willing in your heart to serve. Don't do it just because someone asked you to. Don't do it because, it looks good on your resume or your scorecard, but do it because you really want to serve and have the desire to help others, right? Because that really distinguishes you as a leader versus just another person who want to check the box and say, I finished this today, okay? And you also have to be willing to prioritize other people's needs, okay? And that is not easy to do, right? Especially when you're young, you're starting with your career, and say, hey, it's all about me. I want to make the most money. I want to be the best programmer or the game developer, whatever you want to do, right? But have you thought about you prioritizing other people's need ahead of your need, right? Whatever you want to achieve in your life should also include how you can make other people to be better. Okay? Think about Jesus as an example, right? Since this is I don't know what you call this program, but I assume that you would talk about the biblical principle, right? Jesus had a great example, being a servant leader, right? He really dared to serve his people. He washed his disciple feet. But that is just a really vivid example. But in general, he really dared to try to serve and fulfill his Father's purpose to lead them to a better place, right? So what is servant leader? There's actually Luke in the Gospel of Luke. It talk about Jesus said, but not so with you, rather let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. So he actually said that. For who is the greater, one who reclines the table or one who serves? Is it not the one who reclines the table? But I am among you as the one who serves. That comes about as Jesus, talk about how you don't want to be the number one guest on the table, but if you are willing to serve, you will have better reward at the end. Okay. Skip this one. All right, let's give you some of the practice of servant leadership. Okay. Number one is self-awareness. Now, I know being a young person, because I remember when I was your age, self-awareness is very difficult because you don't really have a lot of self-confidence. It's like, I'm not sure. And then you're shy, you don't want to stand out, and then you just want to blend in with other people. But being self-awareness is being understanding who you are. Okay. and not necessarily just trying to dress nicely and you know, to stand out, but to learn that how you affect other people, right? And because other people are watching you as well, right? People notice each other, and taking the time to think about how we behave and why and when, because you have to understand yourself first before you can serve others, right? That's why I started with the curiosity, because I have to understand what is important for me, what drives me, right? First, before I can even go out there and serve, right? You basically like equipping yourself to serve others. Okay, be self-awareness. Second is listening. I look at some of the things that you guys talk about. I think David Liu, right, did a class on listening.
Yes.
So I'm not gonna expand on it because he spent a whole class with you. Listening is a very hard skill to learn, by the way. Even over 30 years I work in the company, sometimes I said, you know, you try to jump to the conclusion, you try to cut people off because you don't want to listen. I already know the answer, kind of thing. But it's something you continue to learn. And being able to listen is not just hearing, but understanding everybody, what they talk about, so that you can digest it and come up with some kind of compromise or work with people to get to a solution. One of the best things you can learn about listening is to repeat what other people say, right? I mean, as you actively listen, let's just say you spend, some people tell you a great idea in 5 minutes. See if you can not repeat everything what the person said, but to summarize it in 2 sentences. So, and say, hey, I heard you. What you're saying is this, whatever that might be. Because by doing that, you're actually forcing yourself to digest what you just heard and listen and to summarize it for that person. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to agree 100% what that person say, but at least that will show you that you're willing to listen and to take that into consideration. Okay. The next one is changing the pyramid. This is more applied to in a work environment, right? A lot of organizational theory, people say, hey, we should change the pyramid. Instead of the bosses at the top, the bosses at the bottom supporting the organization. I'm sort of a little bit neutral about this because I've seen people, organization, they publish an org chart where the CEO is the bottom and the customer in the top, and then people who deal with the customer is the top. It is nice, but I really it's come down to whether you really see yourself, if you're high up in you're the vice president or whatever, whether you really spend the time to actually support your people, right? Rather than thinking about you're controlling the people. That's really is a mindset of changing the pyramid rather than whatever is in the org chart, okay? Because you don't want to look at your people as you just ordering them what to do, but you want to engage them so that they are really willing to do the right thing and to serve the organization, right? Think about the army and in the military, right? They really need a lot of discipline. And of course, in the military, you always listen to your senior leader. But at the same time, if your senior leader tell you to go and capture the hill and you're gonna be under a lot of fire and you might die, right? Are you willing to do that, right? That takes a lot of servant leaders to be willing to set the example and willing to, you know, go in front of the group rather than stay behind, right? People see you taking the lead, okay? Developing others. One thing that I find the most satisfying in my career is to help others to be successful. Now, again, most of you are so young, you never have a chance to mentor other people. But as you grow older, as you get more experience, I highly recommend you to spend time to mentor other people, right? You might think that you don't have the right experience, but chances are if let's just say you graduate high school, go to college, you can go back and mentor some of the high school students, right? Tell them your experience, telling them, developing their experience, because you just gone through that. You can share what you know, right? Pay it forward. That's a very important aspect of being a good leader. The next one is coaching, okay? There's a difference between coaching and controlling. Now, some of you probably play in a team sport, right? Football, soccer, baseball, whatever game. Have you ever deal with a coach that really controlling, meaning that they want to tell you exactly what you need to do rather than give you the freedom to do what you're best, right? Versus a good coach would never tell you step by step what you need to do, right? A good coach will give you some guidance of, help you with your mindset give you the confidence, know that you have the right skill, develop the right skill, and then let you go out and do the thing, right? Those are the good coaches, because good coaches are willing to bring out the best of you and give you the mission so that, and trust that you're going to fulfill that mission. Okay. As you grow older to become a leader, being able to coach others is also important, right? Meaning that you're not just there to give them direction. The coach is, if you think about a soccer or football team, right? The coach is not necessarily the person who can go out there and play the best ball. They might, at some point in the past, they were a good player, but as they grow older, they can't do the same thing that you as a younger people or team can do, right? So don't look at the coach as being to do what they tell you, but look at the coach to give you the guidance to be the best. Okay, that is very important. Unleashing the energy, same thing. Just bring out the best of people. I just want to skip over to the foresight, because as I thought through this, and I have gone through this presentation several times, I recently added this. For those of you who can read Chinese, if you understand what it is, great. If you don't, I'll give you the presentation later. You guys can look it up, do Google Translate or look up Google. This is a very old proverbs, Chinese proverbs. The reason I brought this up is I told you that I went to a high school in the Jesuits, and one of the Chinese teachers, he taught me this when I was in my 10th grade, I think. And it stuck with me for all my life. Okay. And it basically said that a good leader, they would worry about things before the other people worry about it, meaning that you always look forward, right? To saying. A good leader also is the last one who celebrates the success, right? Let people celebrate on their own, and then you stand back, let them enjoy the limelight, and then you do at the end to celebrate. That's roughly what it says, okay? Which also I think is very good in terms of what a leader is supposed to be, right? A leader should also always have foresight to looking forward, right? If you just always focus on what you're doing the best now, then you're not really looking forward to see what the danger is coming around the corner, right? And be able to anticipate what should happen in the future. Okay, I've been talking for a long time. I want to do a group discussion. I don't know, Elaine, do we do a discussion?
Yes, we can. Yes, you can all interact and let the youth respond.
Okay, before I go to the last item of what I learned, I want to have a very short discussion. So I want you to think about what I talk about as servant leader. And can you name one person? You don't have to name, but can describe that person. That you think you see some of the trait that I talk about, and what is that one thing you need to overcome? And you think about, or if you talk about your own life, is there one thing that you think you need to do more to become a servant leader?
Great.
So let's hear.
Yeah, so let's start with the first one. Anyone in your mind, in your life, who has any of the traits that teacher Teddy just shared with us? You can open your mic to share or type into the chat box. And our youth are not shy, very eager to share. Go for it. People who are curious to learn, and people who are servant leaders, think about others. And Teacher Ming and I and other speakers have talked a lot about servant leadership. So any people come to mind? Your parent, your teacher, your friend, your counselor, anyone?
Go
ahead.
Me.
Yeah, Ryan.
I believe my friend Steven, I think he's a really good leader for me, and he's also a mentor. Because the reason why he is a good mentor is because he teaches me very well about self-control. So controlling your anger, as well as always trying to learn new things. And he also teaches me to always control my anger. And I think that's a good quality of being a leader.
Beautiful.
That's wonderful. Yeah. It's good to have a friend like that because at your age, you really need to have something to hang on, right? To be able to share. Because sometimes I know it's difficult, because when I was your age, I don't really talk to my parents that much. So my classmate or friend becomes more important as far as that stage of my life, to be able to share and to talk about things. So it's good that you have a friend.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. How old is Steven compared to your age? You're 10th grade.
I think he's in 11th grade.
Wow, that is so beautiful. He's only a year older, and just exactly what teacher Teddy said, how you can coach others. And he's doing that for you, even a year older. So that's great. So
That's
teacher
good.
Teddy, there, Daniel in Michigan, 8th grade said, my brother is a good servant leader because he will provide me guidance, but won't make me do things, ultimately allowing God to work in my life.
Thank you, Daniel. So I assume this is your older brother? Is that
Yeah,
right?
my older brother, he's 8 years older than me.
I
Wow.
was 8 years older than you. Okay, great. That's good. It's good to have someone a little bit more experienced to guide you, especially when you're young, you just don't know what it is. So good. He's paying it forward. Very good.
Yes, yes. Another Daniel Huang, another 8th grade in Arizona said the name of the friend, but it'll be nice to hear what the qualities are. And teacher, Caleb said, Caleb in 6th grade, she said, he's actually my friend. We had lunch together here. He said his teacher also is an example. Yeah, oftentimes your teacher could be a good leader and coach.
Yeah, Caleb, can you elaborate? You don't have to name, but why do you think your teacher is a good leader? Give us some example.
She teaches, not tells, and she explains. She explains things to us, but it gives us some. Like she teaches us how to do some problems. She walks through some problems with us, and then she lets us do some problems on our own to see if we have learned it or not.
That's good, right? Don't just tell you the fact, right? Explain to you the why so that you can now do it on your own. That's very important.
Very well said, Caleb. So proud of you. Then Emily in New Jersey, 7th grade, she said, my mom, because she loves God and she tries to get me closer to God.
That's wonderful. I mean, mother is very, very important in everybody's life. And very often your mother is the one who set the examples and give you that comfort and the confidence that you need, right? So regardless, I think you all love your mom. So set her as an example for you as a leader. That's great. Okay, I know we're running out of time, so I'm just gonna finish the presentation. I thank you for all the contribution you guys do. So let me move on to the last one. So remember, I talk about myself, being curious. I talk about being a servant leader, which is how you interact with the others. So what is the last one? I remember I told you is about yourself, others, and the last one is the purpose. Okay. I call this finding the anchor of your soul. Now, this might little bit is like, what do you mean finding the anchor of your soul, right? This is very abstract. What I mean is finding the purpose, something that you can always go back to when you are just in a crisis, and something that is very stable, right? Think about the if you ever go to the piers, when you see a big boat or a ship, and they anchor at the harbor, right, or by the shore. Why is it important? Well, because if they don't have an anchor, they would just float out to the ocean and outside the harbor, and they may capsize, right? The anchor for a ship is what tied it to the base to make sure that they don't go about, swaying back and forth in the wind and also in the waves. By the same token, the anchor of your soul is what ties you in that anchor or structure to make sure that you're stable, right? You have, it's like the shoes of your feet, right? If you don't wear shoes, you're just like, I can't walk really long and I feel pain, right? You have the comfort, you have something that's stable that you can step on. That really gives you the purpose and the hope and the encouragement, right? And what I find is that in the Bible, it uses a very vivid example of what an anchor is. If you go to, let me go to this one here. In Hebrew, chapter 6, 18 and 19, it says, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. Paul is talking about, understanding that your hope is not in today's, but in the future, right? We look forward to the day when we're in heaven and be with Christ. We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. So this is actually straight from the Bible, anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain. What it's trying to say is that having this anchor is like having the hope of knowing that where you're going. So no matter where you are in the ocean, and then you're being with the high wave coming, and then you don't know what to do, you can always go back to that anchor to secure yourself, right? And the reason I brought this up as the final thing that I talk about, because I think that every one of you, I know most of you only have less than 20 years in your life. So you probably haven't gone through a very difficult time in your life. Maybe you did, right? I don't know. I guarantee you, as you move forward, you will have some very difficult time. Like it could be at school, it could be work, it could be relationship, it could be with your family, it could be with your parents. When you are going through those difficult times, remember what is and who is the anchor of your soul, right? Because that's where you need to go back to, okay? Because if you don't have that anchor, it's very easy that you get swayed to and fro in the ocean. You don't know where you're going, and you're trying to search back to that, lighthouse, right? It's important, because if you don't understand that, then that means that you will be, it's very easy. You just follow whatever the world is telling you to go, and you don't know where you're going. I want to go back to this page where here. One of the things that I learned in the Westminster Catechism, I don't know, probably most of you haven't heard it, or maybe you have, it's taught in Sunday school. The number one question in there is say, what is the chief and highest end of man? Meaning to explain to you, what is the purpose of you? What is the purpose of me, right? He said the man's, meaning men and women in general, human, chief and highest end is to glorify God and fully to enjoy him forever. The reason I brought this up, because it actually tied back to the verse I show you in Hebrew, is having that anchor relationship with God is what bring us joy, right? Bring us the safety, bring us the sure comfort that I know no matter where I am in my life, that I know I can go back to that anchor and enjoy God forever. And that's what really makes difference. In my life, especially for all the life that over 50 years I live in this world, I can count you so many times that I have gone through what we call the valley of the death experience, right? Either work or even relationship with my wife or with my family. I can always go back to the Bible and to God to say, yes, you are my anchor. No matter how hard it is, no matter how difficult the weather outside, right, is raining, I can still pray to God and understand what is most important. So my question to all of you is, do you know who is the anchor of your soul, right? What is that anchor that you want to attach to? And then, have you gone through some biggest trial? I know all of you are very young. You probably haven't gone through biggest trial, but how did you face those challenges, right? I don't know whether you're willing to share or to, what are some of the big challenges you face? I remember when I was your age, right? Every final exam is a big challenge to me. and I used to, I wasn't a believer at the time, but I attended a Catholic church. I remember like right before final, I would walk into our church, our school chapel. I would say a prayer and say, God, please help me with a good grade, right? So that's to the extent, even I wasn't a believer, I know that I need to anchor to something bigger than me, right? So I know we're running out of time, but does anyone have anything to share? Like, have you gone through some big challenge in your life that you want to share with people here?
Yeah, feel free to type in. Daniel, you raise your hand. Go ahead and share.
Okay, yeah. Well, like a couple of years ago, my home life wasn't great since like my parents would argue a lot, and like it would affect me and my three siblings a lot. And like sometimes I would feel okay where I was, and like other times I would feel like I'm being tossed at sea. I don't know where I am, what I'm doing. But like recently, when like, cause I had a relationship with God, but it wasn't as strong. Like if I went through a hard time, I wouldn't turn to Him and fall into Him. I would just try to get through it by myself. But recently, when I found like when God became like more real to me and like He drew closer to me, I was able to have the Holy Spirit to help guide me and bring me peace in these times. And I could turn to the Bible for guidance. So yeah.
That's wonderful, Daniel. I think at your age, you'll be able to see that relationship is so important in your life. Is great. I'm sure we'll continue to provide you that the comforts, right? Wonderful. All
Thank
right,
you
I
for
know
sharing.
we're running out
So
of time. Yeah,
powerful,
thank you for
Daniel.
sharing. I just want to give you a couple more points to think through as we wrapped up. Now, remember I showed you the slide earlier where I put you in the middle and to say how you interact with work, social, family, and church. If you are a believer, what you need to do is to put Christ in the middle, okay? Because really, if you go through this in Galatians 2:20, it said, I have been crucified with Christ. This is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave me himself for me. So the Bible is encouraging you is that, hey, your problem is Jesus' problem. If you can put your life in Christ and trust that he will guide you in all this relationship and yourself, then you will feel comfort and knowing that he will guide you through the rest of your life, right? So I want to encourage all of you to keep that in mind as you go through difficult time, that know that Christ is in the middle and understanding that he will be with you through your whole entire life and have that anchor with him, then you'll be okay, whatever that might be. Okay. So thank you very much. That's all I want to talk about today. I'm very glad to connect with all of you. I hope you get something out of this.